So my name is Stephen Morel. I'm the CEO and founder of JurisDeed, and we're helping tax lien investors to make more with doing less and simplifying the whole process so you can make money like the pros without having to be one. So we got our start in JurisDeed is a software company. It's a startup. We were in the Village X accelerator a couple years ago in New Orleans with the Idea Village. We have raised a little bit of angel funding, and we're mostly bootstrapped. We're in early beta. We do have a little bit of revenue from some enterprise customers, which we're really just helping pay the bills and learning from so that we can help everyone else with all their tricks of the trade and how they're cornering a market for over 100 years, making 18% year-over-year returns with assets that are, backed by real estate, guaranteed by state law. And it's like, why isn't everyone doing this? And it's because, well, as I found out from being a practicing attorney for 15 years doing this, it's really complicated. And it's a lot of pitfalls. And so most people are just like, maybe I'll buy one and then see what happens. And you'll see what happens if you just buy one. So we're developing software that's going to help make it, simplify it for everyday investors to make those kinds of returns without having to be an institutional investor. So I got my start doing this. I hate to use the Katrina cliche, but for me, it was real. I was just a random attorney, just that, not really know what I wanted to do and wasn't very happy. My house flooded and had about 5 feet of water in my house, and then just sort of had to, like everybody else who was there, had to pick up the pieces, get your insurance claim, get your contractors, met a bunch of realtors and brokers and everything. And I didn't really know a whole lot about real estate at the time. And I decided that I had to fix my own house up. And I fell in love with real estate. I was like, this is awesome. I can see the change. This was cool. And then I walked outside my house, and I was one of the lucky ones. I'm a veteran, and I had USAA, had insurance early on. And so I'm happy to get home. I was home before Christmas in 2005. But I walked outside, and 90% of the city wasn't. And I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of work to do. So I said, well, why don't I put my real estate and legal expertise and practice into helping other people get back home, helping investors to help clean up the city and make a good investment out of it. So fell into tax liens because there were a lot of unpaid taxes, and that's the number one source of revenue for the city, and for most municipalities is tax revenue, real estate tax. And for a city that desperately needed revenue after Katrina, and they couldn't find everybody, that's a big problem, right? So it became an opportunity for me to develop a product. And what did I run into? If you're in the real estate industry, especially the title attorney colleague in the back, what's the hardest thing to do when you have a tax sale property? Anybody know the answer? Get title insurance? Anybody heard of that problem before? So I was like, why aren't we all doing this? So I found out pretty fast. And so everybody said it couldn't be done. I typically have heard that in my life and decided to just charge in and do it anyway. And we created a product that was just exclusively for, if you remember, Commonwealth Title Insurance Company way back when. They got bought out by Fidelity and et cetera. But we were able to start insuring tax sale properties on a one-by-one basis. And then I created the first title insurance product that partnered with the city of New Orleans and through Civic Source to insure the adjudicated properties. So I used to be the chief legal officer of Civic Source. I created a title company inside of a software company, took it across the state, it was real title insurance, even though First American wanted to think it wasn't. Now Crescent Title is even insuring these things, I've heard. So crazy how the world works. But to this day, over 10,000 properties have received title insurance, and they've had 5 claims. And the reason is because it's a lot of work. There's no shortcuts, and there was no cutting corners. There's no way we were getting title insurance approval unless we did the whole thing. So these properties, these were adjudicated properties. You can only see a couple of them here, but the left side is the before and the right side is the after. And these were, you can tell that one's probably in the Lakeview area. And these were bought and insured and then reinsured and then sold to homeowners with title insurance. So we were, I still have not really calculated the magnitude of the impact that this has had, and it's still going, but obviously something I'm very proud of. I left Civic Source and decided that it was great. I wasn't an owner there, and it was still a lot of work, and it still wasn't a whole lot of fun. Even though this was fun, the work wasn't. And so we decided to explore the idea of software that can take the difficulties of going through a process like clearing title to an adjudicated property. If you haven't tried it, don't. It's not fun. And automating that, if at all possible. And that was the goal, the lofty goal I had when I started my software company back in 2021. And since then, it has taken a few twists and turns. But that's not why you're here today. And I want to tell you a little bit about me, just because you know who you're hearing from. I've been helping tax sale investors across the country. And of course, I'm from here, but I have spoken and written on the national scene. I've been on national podcasts and videos and conferences at the institutional level and at the lower level of investing for the past 10, 12 years, about 12 years. So I also sat on the Law Institute committee that advised the legislature on the upcoming tax sale changes in Louisiana. That was a long time coming. Our legislative committee was not, didn't have a vote. You didn't elect us to do it. We're just the brain trust that advises the legislature on constitutional changes. And they didn't take all my suggestions, but they took a few. There were a few that I was kind of wishing they had kept in there, but it is a significant change. If you have not invested in tax sales before today, and you're interested in it in Louisiana, it's almost like just get a little bit of base knowledge about what's it all about, but just focus on 2026 because the whole entire game is changing. We're going to go through that in the presentation in just a moment. So let me click on the little presentation button here. Did y'all know that's actually Baton Rouge? I saw that picture, and it looked like a stock photo of a really pretty picture. I was like, that is Baton Rouge, but looking at it from Port Allen, looking east, is the sun's rising. That's a really great, that's like one of the best pictures I've ever seen of Baton Rouge. There ain't a whole lot else to see there. So as you know, we're pretty different here in Louisiana from the rest of the country in a lot of ways. Tax sales is no exception. So for the last 100 years, we were one of 3 states that allowed the tax collectors to sell delinquent taxes and allow the bidders to compete to get that tax lien and bid down the ownership percentage in the property. Somebody thought that was a really awesome idea. I wish I could go back in time and tell them it was not an awesome idea, but I can't, and it created a lot of title problems and a lot of confusion among the assessors, the collectors, owners, et cetera. It's really bad. Well, it will be changed in 2026. A little slow to come around, but we got there. We got there. So I like to bring this up because we're really different, right? We don't have, our seasons are a little different than their seasons. We have crawfish and snowballs and football and Mardi Gras, basically, just to kind of drive the point home. But why would you be interested in tax lien investing? I'm gonna go through this really fast because you want to get to the Louisiana specific part, but this is data from financial analysts, hedge funds, and et cetera, that invest hundreds of millions of dollars a year in this. It's not really 8, it's really the average is 13 to 18% year-over-year returns. But now that's at the institutional level. So you're not just buying one tax lien, right? And that one doesn't work, well, shoot, I didn't get my money back, right? But at a higher level, that's the kind of returns you can expect. It outperforms the stock market every single year. It's backed by real estate, as you well know. It's just like a mortgage foreclosure. You're going to have the collateral to foreclose on. Now I know it's not that simple, but it's there. It's better than other things that aren't secured. And real estate is something that is not so volatile that it changes with presidential signing of big beautiful bills, if you will, right? So like things that will change on a dime. And so it's resistant to that kind of volatility. And so that's a good thing. It's also backed by both state and federal laws, and it makes it a super lien status. And if you're not familiar with what that means, it's as high as it gets. Even for things that came before it, it jumps over it. You're in first position. Why? Because collecting tax is paramount for everyone's good. And so you gotta be able to collect tax. If you can't, Everybody, guess what happens if you can't collect enough tax? Two things. One or two things. Anyone guess? One or two things what happens if you can't collect enough tax for that year?
The city goes bankrupt.
Well, that's a really bad year, yes. Yes, well, you can't make budget, right? So you can't afford the things that you budgeted to spend money on. So you're going to have less. But what happens to everyone else who does pay on time? Taxes go up, right? You're either going to meet the budget or you're going to have less, or you collect tax. Tax lien investors have filled a void for over 100 years in helping the tax collectors to fund that year's budget. They'll typically, on average, across the country, will collect about 80%, 80 to 85%, something like that, and the investors come in and pay and fund the other almost most collectors are at 99% once they finish the tax sale. Now, so that what basically means is that the county or the parish or the city has a lien on the property to collect that tax, and they've just auctioned it off. They've transferred the lien over to the investor to hold that lien until the end of that legal time period. And every state's different. So we talked about well, why isn't everyone doing this? Well, because it's really freaking hard and it's complex. And the complexity is a barrier to entry. And for people that have figured it out, they love the complexity because it keeps everyone else out, right? And everyone else can't play. Every state's got some kind of different variation. There's effectively 3 different systems, though. There's tax liens. You've probably heard of tax deeds. And then we used to be called a hybrid state or a redeemable deed. Effectively, the lien is what I just described a few minutes ago, where the delinquent tax is not paid, and then the collector wants its money that year, in that budget year, and so they auction off the lien, not the property, just the lien, to an investor who pays it and then starts taking the place of the collector and collects that interest when it's paid. And if it's not paid, then there's a foreclosure process to liquidate the lien, et cetera. Tax deed states who choose not to sell a lien at all do in-house collections. They'll do their own in-house, like the county itself will try to collect, and after a certain amount of years and trying to do their own legal due diligence and sending out certified letters and all the stuff that tax lien states kind of put on the investor, the tax deed states say, hey, we've already done everything we're supposed to do. We've already given due process of notice, and we've already done. Now we're just going to auction off the property. And it's going to be a quitclaim deed with no warranties, of course, but that's the tax deed state. You're going to get the ownership, the quasi-ownership of the property, and have the obligation to go and try to get marketable title. The hybrid states is kind of what we used to be, where you would buy a tax lien, and you would have, after a passage of time, if it didn't redeem, I mean someone didn't come pay back the lien with interest within the set period. Of course, Louisiana has always been 3 years, from the time of the tax sale until the time that those rights expire, to pay the whole thing off with interest. If they didn't do that, there wasn't a subsequent auction or a foreclosure, like a mortgage foreclosure. That lien holder then had the right to go and confirm their title in a court of law with no other competition. So it's a pretty attractive concept if you're an investor, because you only have to compete once, right? And if the lien doesn't pay off, which is kind of something you want, most investors, tax lien investors, want the redemption. That is why you go to a tax lien state. It's not a great way to get property, because guess what? Across the board, 91% of all tax liens will redeem. So if you're trying to get property, you have a 91% chance of losing. It's not good odds, right? The tax deed states, you have a 100% chance of getting a deed, because that's all they sell. So but the ones that the big buyers have come to Louisiana and other states that kind of do the liens, that convert the deeds, they've essentially built systems that can handle either one, right? That's how they've been successful. If it's a lien, great. If it happens to go to deed, they have to foreclose, they got a process for that too. So along the way, Louisiana, I'll start to get into Louisiana law, because if you're an investor in Louisiana, you have to know this stuff. You have to be able to know what you got to do. It's not as simple as buying a property. It's just fee simple property that you have clear title to, and you're buying effectively a mortgage on the property that has rights to collect and then foreclose if you can't collect. So you have to file paperwork, and you have to file affidavits, and you have to send notifications. You've got to do research and look into who the interested parties are, and where are they living, and are they alive or dead, and prove you did it, and all this kind of stuff. So it's complex. And then if you start to want to spread your wings and go to Mississippi and Alabama and Texas and see what's happening there, stop what you, I mean, what you know in Louisiana is not going to help you. You're going to have to learn a different system. And even if it's a tax lien system and et cetera, there's a whole different set of laws. So the whole process nationwide is fragmented. We're dealing with 50 different versions of this thing. And so if you want to try to have a bigger business and try to spread out and have more presence, which is easier to do now from the standpoint of the auctions, because more and more auctions are online. So it makes accessibility to the auctions a lot easier from wherever you are in the world. But complexity doesn't go away. The knowledge that you need to have and the comprehension is going to be different in every state. It's one thing that we're aiming to level the playing field with at JurisDeed, is to simplify it and take that variable out of the equation. Illiquidity, you all know that one, right? We're all real estate investors here. But when you're talking to other investors who are interested in moving from liquid assets to illiquid assets, this is a big thing, right? This is like, wait a minute, I can't just go grab my money out. Even a 401k or an investment account, you might pay a penalty, but you can get your money back. You can go take it out in 48 hours. Fidelity will send you a check, right? And so illiquidity is a big deal. You're going to have to you may have to keep your money parked in that thing for a while, especially if it doesn't redeem. And so that's not something that's tolerable to a lot of investors, depending upon what your strategy is and what your need for cash flow is and liquidity. And there isn't a regimented secondary market. This is something that it's still today. It's crazy. It's always been, since I first got into the industry, it's always been kind of the wild, wild west. Y'all were talking before about like who's got a deal. I mean, that's like the tax lien market is like way crazier than that, because you're talking about institutional guys and they're trying to offload portfolios and they're like, hey, you want this one, you want that one? They're swapping and all this kind of stuff. It's not regulated. It's just the wild, wild west. But so that's confusing. It's like, well, how does that help me? Like, I mean, you got to figure out who you know. Like you got to meet somebody that knows people, and there are more places popping up online that are kind of trading platforms and auctions and that kind of thing. But anyway, pain points. So, quick primer on this is current law. This is pre-2026 when it will all change. Auctions at this. Now, this is the annual tax lien auction. We are a tax lien state. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We're a tax lien state. They're just selling the lien on the property for the delinquent taxes. And the bidding, it starts at 100% of ownership. So confusing. Most people who don't understand this, they get into bidding. They're like, wait a minute, I'm going to get 99%. And then it doesn't change how much they have to pay, though. So it's sort of like Monopoly money, right? You just keep on hitting the bid button. You're like, you're winning, and you're not having to pay anymore, right? You're like, what does that mean? Well, there's a 91% chance you won't have to find out, because the redemption amount doesn't take into account how much the percentage of the collateral you have, right? This is your collateral. It says it's if it doesn't redeem, that's how much you could go after and foreclose on. You would literally have the right to take away from the tax debtor only that percentage of ownership, like you were co-owning it with your siblings. Crazy, right? You want to be a co-owner with your debtor, move in, right, down the hall, how's it going? It's crazy, right? And both of you have, in Louisiana law, I mean, 1%, you have the same rights as the 99% person. You have the right to possess the property, right? So it's just nutty. It's nutty. There is the way that most investors who have been doing this a while have found a way to get around that and make this into a business is using partitions. Just like you've probably heard with succession properties, estate properties, where you have to sell mom and dad's property, divide up the assets. No, everybody doesn't want to hold on to it, et cetera. Tax lien investors have used the same methodology. You confirm your partial ownership after this is post-redemptive period. 3 years passed, didn't pay back. Now you have a percentage in. You don't have the whole thing. So you go and ask the court to force the sale, put the property on an auction block. And you still only can get your percentage of, let's say it sells at the auction, which is what you're hoping happens, right? Because you got to liquidate this thing and get your money back. You're still going to be entitled to get that percentage of the equity. You can get your taxes and any kind of improvements you put in and interest and all kinds of stuff. So it's not totally bad. And at least you get a little bit back. But it starts to make you think, though, about your bidding strategy if you are going to be playing in this system, if you're going to just race down to 1% at the auction just so you can make sure you win it, or if you might want to kind of like ease your way down and bid and maybe stop at like 90%, because if you have to take the property back, That's exactly how much equity you'll have in the property. The interest rate, again, the primary focus, because it's a 91% redemption rate, right? So 1% per month, simple interest, not compounding, but over a 3-year redemption period, and if it goes that long. Now, granted, in the redemption period, anybody can pay it off at any time. It's an absolute constitutional right. They don't care who's paying it. Could be grandma, next door neighbor, whatever. The collector will take the check. It's redeemed. You will get a check back. The collector handles the whole thing. This is the sheriffs, obviously, or if it's a city tax. Some cities do their own tax sales. And I'm not talking about New Orleans, where it's just a combined thing. But like Shreveport has a separate tax sale from Caddo Parish. That's a whole other class. We're not going to go there. So anyway, hybrid system, you got 1% per month, and then you immediate 5% penalty. So think about this. You pay $1,000 taxes, right? That's the lien, and you win it. Doesn't matter the percentage right now of ownership. You're going to get an immediate 5% on your money the second that you're the winning bidder, and 1% per month. If it redeems the next day, you're going to get 6% back on top of your money. 3-year redemption rate means it can go up to 41% collectively, right? Disregard the time value of money, all that stuff, but just 41% collectively over that 3-year period. Not too bad, right? And then, of course, in the current system, if it doesn't redeem, you'll be able to file a lawsuit in court, and it's just called a suit to quiet title, and you will be able to you have to get everybody served as an ordinary lawsuit, just like car accident or a business dispute. You got to serve everybody. Now, oftentimes, the ones that don't redeem, there's a reason for that. There's a good reason for it, or why no one came back after they were served. There's a good reason for that. Every once in a while, a gem passes through all the way there, and because maybe the area has changed and there's an opportunity to rehab, et cetera. So there's opportunities there for fix and flippers, for wholesalers. I always like to connect wholesalers with the tax lien investors who don't want the properties, because they end up having these inventories, and the conduit between those two groups is basically this complexity, right? It's like you want deals, but you don't want lemons, right? And you want someone who can navigate you through that. And again, not to keep sounding like a sales pitch, but that's what I did in private practice. That's kind of what we're trying to build software around. So if you're diving into tax lien investing anywhere, whether it's Louisiana or anywhere else, and the very first thing is it's all your time and money needs to be spent, not money, but time and effort needs to be spent on due diligence up front. I mean, this is not news to anyone who's an experienced real estate investor in any kind, right? You got to study the market. You got to study the property. You got to go drive all the properties. Now, this is sometimes cumbersome because you got 64 parishes in Louisiana. You got umpteen that's cities that sell. They do it every year. They're all at different times, which is actually a good thing. Some states, they force all the sales to be on the same day across the whole state. It's kind of hard to be in a lot of different places at one time, right? So you got to hire a team, and everybody's got to be on the same page and you got to have a budget, and it's just crazy. But so here is a matter of really getting familiar with the property. My advice to my clients has always been, don't bid on anything that you would not be happy taking that property back in foreclosure. Even if you're 91% chance of winning, because one bad deal can really kill a portfolio, especially if you're buying the most common investors, if they're doing this regularly, you're going to be buying 20, 30, 40, 50 liens a year, that kind of thing. I mean, one bad deal can put a big dent in that portfolio performance. So make sure it's something that you're okay with, and don't roll the dice and say, well, I'm probably not going to get that property, because you might. Most auctions are online now. Civic Source, and again, I don't speak for them, I don't work for them anymore, but they have one. Zeus is a competitor. I think they're better than Civic Source, by the way. I tried to tell them to fix it, but they just wouldn't listen. So anyway, but there are more and more coming online. The ones that are in person, though, are still kind of fun. If you ever like going to an auction, it is a lot of fun. When I first got into the industry, there was the guys who had been there a while were telling me, like, this is what they do. Seriously, they'll go to the college campuses and hire the prettiest girls to come with them to the sheriff's auctions, because the sheriff's deputies are the ones who are auctioning up the properties. And they put them all in the front row. And they're like, And they win all the auctions somehow. I don't know how. So. Anyway, 3-year redemption period in Louisiana. Other states do have different time periods. So like Mississippi is 2 years. So, you can kind of like, if you understand the different systems, you can kind of, with online auctions, you can kind of like forum shop, right? You can kind of say, hey, man, I don't like really Louisiana. Even though you're from here, you can bid all your investments in another state. Much more doable today than ever before. What this is saying, if you, that's small print, 2156 is the statute that requires the investor to send notifications to all interested parties, people who have a recorded interest in the property during the redemption period. Which is difficult because it still might redeem. We're talking about like later stages, like 2.5 years in. And the good thing about those, if you do it right, is you might spur more redemptions. And that's what we know. That's what we was one of the biggest unsurprising impacts of the work we did that I created at Civic Source for the adjudicated properties was the redemptions on, remember, the worst of the worst. And there were huge tax bills, and we had a 30% redemption rate initially in New Orleans. I could not believe that there were that many people who wanted to pay that much money for those piles of you-know-what. And they were bad. So anyway, notifications work, and once you've done that, even if they don't pay, you've checked the box of compliance, and now you have an easier path to go to foreclosure and get service. You know where people are. You can go send the sheriff out to go serve them because you already went through the mess of like, oh, well, that person died, but I know that their son is over here, right? You've already done that work. So the things that kind of get in the way of a lot of investors, and it's some of the things that we help with frequently. I mean, data, right? But we're talking about addresses, heirs and dead people, and people who have interests in things that it's not recorded in public records, and then coming back in to mess up your foreclosure action by defending it and attacking you back. So that's not good. All right, so I want to jump ahead to 2026 because I want to get to Q&A faster, so you can stop hearing me talk about stuff that maybe you're not that interested in. But the biggest differences in 2026, no more bid down of ownership. It's officially gone. It was in the Constitution, which is why it wasn't changed the last time there was an overhaul in 2009. And so now there's the constitutional amendment passed, thank God, because you never know with those things. But it is now a bid down of interest rate. So the interest rate that you could earn on the money that you paid at the auction was 1% fixed before. It starts at 1% now, but the competing bidding is going to bid it down by tenth of a point increments down to 0.7. Not a whole lot of movement, but just enough to kind of get some action in there. 0.7 across the board, still not bad, right? And I'm pretty sure that the law allows you to, all biddings will start at 1%, but you can open your first bid and just go right to 0.7. The auction's over. If you can't go any lower, it's 0.7. It just used to be like if you were to bid 1% ownership right out the gate, you can't outbid a 1%, right? You can't go lower than that, so the auction's over. Foreclosure is simplified, but many of you here that are love the property are not going to like to hear this part. In the old system, even though maybe in a partial interest, you could still go claim a piece of, if not all of the property. Your tax lien, unredeemed, gave you that exclusive right to go take that property and whatever equity you had in it. Now, it's like a mortgage foreclosure. You'll have your unredeemed lien that you did all the things right, and now you'll go and file to foreclose on your lien, and the sheriff will put that property at a public auction. You don't have exclusive rights to it anymore. And you're entitled to get your what you're owed back. Your attorney will put that together in a like it does for the bank. Will put together all of the attorney's fees and all of the costs and interest and all the things that the law allows you to recoup, and that'll be the opening bid. So first bid comes in, you're paid back in full, but anyone who outbids you would, and the auction's over, would win the property. You can bid at your own auction though, just like you could if you were the bank at a mortgage foreclosure. It literally is where they mirrored that process almost identically.
Do you get the overage?
No. Which is consistent with how mortgage foreclosures are, right? The bank doesn't keep you might get the property. if you were the winning bidder, but the sale proceeds from the sale at the auction is going to satisfy the lien holder, the one who foreclosed on it, you, the tax lien holder, and potentially any other subordinate lien holders, if there are any others, and then any leftover equity is parked into the registry of the court for the benefit of the homeowners. This is how mortgage foreclosures have been done for decades, right? But the tax sale world was really turned upside down 2 years ago. The U.S. Supreme Court heard Tyler v. Hennepin, which came out of Minnesota, which Minnesota had a scheme that, I don't mean like a intentional scheme, but just a legal process that just said, we're going to keep it. The state of Minnesota said, we're ours, why not? They got the perfect case to challenge it. Little old lady, $30,000, $40,000 house, $400 tax bill. 9-0 decision, apolitical. It was like, yeah, you can't take more than you're owed. You're owed your taxes back, right? So that part of the Wild Wild West is officially over. That got handed down, and then it started trickling down to all the states. And any state that wasn't currently had a process in place to preserve the surplus equity and at least try to get it. And they didn't say it had to stay there forever. They didn't say that there couldn't. It just said you have to have a process. I'm talking about the states. Some kind of process that tries to get that back to the homeowner that it's entitled to. It's not totally a bad idea, right? I know, just speaking to a room of investors, like, I want to get that money, but it's just the way it goes. There are other opportunities if you're opportunistic and you're thinking about surplus equity, recovery, and I've helped clients with that as well. That is a good business, and because most of those people will never know that happened, especially at that point. Think about it; they've been served like 3 times, or attempted, so they're not coming back, right? And if you're the foreclosing attorney, you probably know where they are too. And they probably could use your help to get that money back. I'm just saying. I'm always thinking about new businesses, so my team's got to keep me focused on the job at hand. I have the silver box that they keep the key to. It's my idea box. So, but simplified foreclosure, what that means is that it's tried and true process. It's mortgage foreclosures. There's no problems with the title anymore. There's no problems getting title insurance anymore. You know why? You know the strongest lobbyist group for this version of the law that's in? The title insurance industry. You got it. This is their version. And I'm not like totally opposed to that. I mean, I wrote title insurance for 15 years. I mean, like I get it. And that was what I was up against, was trying to get insurable title. I was just, going about it with the elbow grease way and trying to track people down and et cetera. And title insurance, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with it. It's the only kind of insurance that insures for something that already happened rather than something that hasn't yet happened. It's the only kind like it, right? And it's the only kind that is on a perpetual mission to find zero risk in an industry that insures against risk. So I never got that. It's like, we are paying you to insure against some kind of risk. You realize that, right? All right, so winners and losers, smaller investors, it actually could help because institutional investors who had these big elaborate systems laid out for both liens and deeds and the whole partial interest workaround with partition actions and everything, that doesn't benefit them anymore. And I can tell you for a fact, I'm in those circles of those institutional guys, that some of them are pulling out. And there's going to be a lot more tax liens for sale to more investors that could not compete with them before with their auto bot programming and rating the auctions online and that kind of stuff. And there's going to be a lot more for sale and a lot more available. If you're not willing to do due diligence and you're kind of just sort of want to coast, this actually has less protections for you. The good news now with due diligence, though, just to add another benefit to it, is previously, if you were to do research during the redemption period and send out notifications, that was not part of the redemption price, which means you did that at your own cost. So you were kind of disincented to do the right thing, right? To go find people. Now, and I wrote this in, by the way, I'm pretty proud of it, $500, you get that back in the redemption price. You just got to have your, when you send your notifications out, you go take your affidavit to the sheriff and say, I did it, and then they'll add it to the redemption price and they'll send you a check once it redeems. If it doesn't, it becomes part of the lien that will go to the foreclosure auction too. So it now incentivizes you to do the right thing, which will actually get good notice to the right people at the right time, and it's good for everybody. So anyway, oop, too far.
Question.
Yeah, sure.
For the $500, is that what you provide, service you provide?
Well, you're a sharp guy. I like you. Yes. So that was like our core service when we first started was literally just automating the process of getting the title work, the skip tracing, and the investigative research, and sending out notifications and sort of milling that. And everybody needed that. And honestly, that was very state agnostic too, because like every state had to send notices to interested parties. So we've kind of bottled that up into a more automated process that is state specific to when it's supposed to happen, and then capturing the proof of it. We have an audit trail that goes straight from the USPS directly into an affidavit. So we have verified proof. It's already been tested in court, et cetera. And yeah, so long answer to your question, yes. Yeah.
Under the new rules, you could do that right away as soon as you pass it and still get that $500 on redemption.
Yeah, on redemption, starting in 2026. So the new law, very, very good point, it's not retroactive. So you're going to be playing with two different systems, and that's why actually it is a good idea to kind of like let the current system sink in, because if you potentially, if you're able to acquire a lien on the secondary market, it's still in the it's going to be fixed to whatever the law was at the time of the auction. So everything that went to sale before 2026, past law, old law, current law now, but 2026 moving forward, it'll be the new law. It could be. I know some people who have no interest in buying in the new law, and they're just buying like crazy under the current law because they just want to fill up the coffers before they go out with a bang. Obviously, partnering with experts who know how to scale due diligence, legal and title due diligence to maximize your returns is a smart idea. And preparing for foreclosure workflows with the new system. So what that means is you're going through redemption, and you got to be thinking about the next phase. If you end up getting a check back, great, that didn't take any work because the sheriff handles the redemptions 100%. You don't get involved in the redemption process at all. The exact opposite happens if post-redemption period, then at some point the sheriff is out of it, and then you are the one who you'll be dealing with the homeowners. That's under the current system. Under the new law, at the 3-year mark, it doesn't automatically end the redemption period. And that's just one thing that still is, I think, is going to be tweaked as the law goes into a couple years of being used. I think it was a mistake for them not to affix it to something that is objective and can't be like, the wind can't move it. But that redemption period notifications is a mandate now, which is why it's tied to a $500 rebate. So that's not a bad deal. But if you don't do that notification, the redemption period will not end at the 3-year mark. It won't end until 6 months has passed from the time you do go ahead and do it. The other thing is the current law, there's no prescription period. We call it statute of limitations from common law. We call it a prescription period here, which is when like your rights expire. Tax liens in Louisiana right now, there is none. It's forever. Until someone, technically speaking, it's forever. Under the new law, 7 years. You have to wait 3 at a minimum. So it's technically you have 4 from the time of maturity, from the time you have first are vested with a right to do something with it, 4 more years, and then it would automatically expire. You would no longer have rights in that tax lien. Also a good thing, right? We don't want these tax liens to just kind of build up and just never do anything. We want serious investors. You would do what you need to do with the foreclosure, get liquidated, et cetera. So we're testing out our new platform is not live right now. It is definitely using AI, and it's super cool. For a tax sale nerd, come on. It's like really cool. It's like, it is basically spotting what's likely to redeem, things like that. That's like crazy intelligence, and it's just not at a point ready for the big leagues yet. But it is. We're already doing the automated compliance, and that's such a huge lift off of most investors who don't want to get involved in that. So we're doing a good thing. So we do have a landing page that is, I think, hopefully live as of this evening. No time like the present. that is effectively a wait list. If I get email addresses from everybody that's here, I'm happy to send you the link that you can just download it. Or if you want to scan me with your phone, let's see if this works. Somebody try it first. Let's see if the old technology is working today. If that takes you to a landing page, shoot. Okay. Keep the I guess I don't know if you can scan it later or if it remembers the scan, but if it's a URL issue, we'll fix it. But anyway, when I'll send out the presentation, it'll have the correct barcode in there. So don't worry about this. This is just me playing around with the things that my developers should be doing. So yeah, that's it. I wanted to. Thank you for having me here. It's been fun. Like I used to give these presentations a lot less with software, more about like the grind of the process of adjudicated properties, which is just kind of boring. But this is a lot more fun. And I'm just sort of kind of now at a point where we have an actual product and we have some paying customers and we're growing to market, and it's pretty exciting for us. We have a team of 4. We have about 10 contractors around that do a lot of work for us, and no, maybe we'll be Louisiana's next startup success. We'll see. Maybe you can help us get there. So thank you for having me. I am so Q&A. Happy to answer anything's on the table. Happy to answer questions. Yes.
What were the things you had wanted the Law Institute to take up?
Ooh, good question.
that didn't get in?
Well, the first thing I kind of spilled the beans already was a fixed redemption period. I don't like the movable target thing. I mean, especially for investors, you want to be able to like have predictable, outcomes and be able to wrap your mind around something. So that was a big deal. That was a big fight actually, and that was a compromise that was done in closed doors that I wasn't invited to. So fixed redemption period. I actually wanted it shorter. I wanted it more like 2 years, like a lot of states do. I think 3 years is too long. So that was a big thing. I liked the auction system that is an overbid. Overbid system, instead of bidding down the interest rate, you bid up the price you're willing to pay. Let's go back to my $1,000 tax lien example, right? The taxes are still $1,000. That's what they're off. That's what they need to collect. But it's like, I'll pay $1,001 for that $1,000 tax bill. I'll pay $1,002, right? And that's an overbid. Now, that overbid, as a matter of fact, most tax lien states have an overbid system for competitive bidding. The only distinction is a few states decide to keep the overbid in the event of a redemption, which is a disincentive for investors, right? So they got to then combat that with this, but that's crazy. This was most tax lien systems, and the one that I wrote was an overbid system that returned the overbid to the investor in the event of redemption. Obviously, if it doesn't redeem, you get the property, right? Or you get some other recovery in a foreclosure. Now, this was also written before that U.S. Supreme Court case came out where it said you can't have the surplus equity. So it used to be where it's like, oh, well, they get the property. Well, now you can't have that either, right? So now it's like, but there's always ways to combat that. Like, well, do you raise the interest rate? There's always ways. Do you shorten the redemption period? You can make things that still make it palatable. And they were pretty eventually understanding of how important it was to maintain a desirability for investment in delinquent taxes in Louisiana, because if you don't, you're gonna have some broke parishes who, and that's a problem for everybody. So they've got to find that balance. You can't leave people hanging and can't forget to send notices to people who are entitled to it. I mean, you got to do the right thing, but you also can't make it where no one wants to invest. So those are the two biggest things. I think there were some other smaller things. I mean, more esoteric, more just like. I probably had more of an investor-friendly version than they wanted. Obviously, that's who I serve now. I'm on the better side, I think. But if we connect after this, we can nerd out on this thing. I can dive into what my version was, and I do think that there's an opportunity for some of that stuff to still become law, because it's statute, and legislatures like to change statutes every year. So that's what they love to do. And I think once they start getting this court tested, and you start having some lawsuits and some fallout from that, there'll be other agenda items that get pushed to the forefront.
Was their goal to get the larger investor groups
No, but they weren't very sympathetic to him either. And that was still like a common sense thing that was trying to drill into their heads. Like you're so short-sighted. Like if you seriously, like I get it's not a perfect world, right? You're gonna have someone who complains about everything. If the institutional investors are funding 80% of your delinquent tax roll for the state every year, you're gonna kick that client to the curb, or are you going to take that cash and operate your county, which is the primary goal of the tax sale, is to collect tax, right? And so it seemed like that just never. It was more of a industry lobbying effort, like, but that doesn't help me kind of mentality, you know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I'm idealistic, but I just seemed like that was really short-sighted. Ultimately, the version that came out was a little bit more balanced, but still more title-friendly than investor-friendly.
I feel like there's a big issue in Mississippi with these larger companies that buy and then are not responding to people that are trying to redeem back taxes. Does that make sense? Like, I guess if it matures after the third year or the second year that they're trying to buy that lien back, and they want it to mature.
Who's they? Who's trying to buy it?
The large group investors that are buying the majority of the tax sales.
The institutional.
They're trying to buy what didn't redeem, like they're trying to buy the.
No, that, like, say that a property goes up for tax sale the first year.
Yeah.
And a company buys it.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe 2 years later, they're trying to get a hold of that company to buy the lien back.
Yeah.
Buy the lien off or whatever. And they're not responding because their whole goal is, well, my speculation.
Right.
Is in a sense like a illegal money laundering, because it's like a orthopedic company or
Okay.
a medical industry company that are buying a large group, especially in Forest-Lamar County, and they are impossible to get in touch with.
Wow. Yeah.
Will the county step in and help?
Yeah, they should. Well, or actually, that's probably like more of a federal. It's a interstate commerce thing. That's more of a federal thing.
I think that they leave it because, like you're saying, they're funding the county.
Yeah.
Getting those taxes in.
Could be.
So they're kind of like, no, like they respond to us.
Antitrust lawsuits were a big thing on the taxing industry for a while. I mean, you know, illegally collaborating together and trying to corner the market and that kind of stuff. And it's because if you have deep pockets and you have the power to do that, it's not hard if there wasn't any pushback. And but there's some pretty severe consequences for that too. I mean, talking about like federal REIA statutes and you know, anti-monopoly and antitrust stuff. It's no joke. So, you know.
Can't they go to the Chancery Clerk's office and pay those taxes there? You don't even have to get to the guy that bought it.
It depends on if it's in the redemption. Yeah, most states have in that redemption period, that legal redemption period. It's not up to the investor to answer the calls or take the money. It's up to the collector, and that's the only arbiter. That's the person. But what might be happening is that if that time period lapses, they don't have to answer the phone.
Right.
That's the advantage.
I guess maybe it's the way I've seen it is it's where it's matured.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying to come back and.
That's after the third year?
After the third year, yeah.
Well, in Louisiana it would be the third year. Mississippi would be.
Payoff departments never, usually only have one person manning the phone.
Right.
I know with most companies.
Yeah.
Put that out there.
Or this company has a representative in the state of Mississippi that's an attorney, and of course.
You're right.
Attorneys are good to get a hold of.
And then they'll charge you when they get a hold of it.
Is there a certain property type that you'd be looking for, ideally, like whether it be vacant land, a single-family home, or ones that you'd avoid?
If you were an aspiring tax lien investor, or you want so it's not so much like the property. I know I said make sure it's a property that you'd be willing to take back, and that still is the case. But the primary target is the the likelihood of redemption, and that's why some of the data we're really mining is like trying to like figure that those trends out. And if you want to really try to maximize your success in getting, let's say you're diversifying, right? You have some hard, like real estate here and over here, and you want some tax liens here for that return, that nice interest rate. You want to maximize that, right? And if your redemption rate is 97% instead of 91% on average, then it's a pretty good deal. Well, how would you do that? You would typically speaking, like this is a very simple oversimplification of it, but the higher the tax amount, the higher the likelihood it's going to redeem. It makes sense. It's probably something that somebody wants to not let go, right? It's not it's a kind of a 1% loan. For 3 years, if you didn't pay your taxes, nothing can happen to you except for having to pay a little bit more back. So for people who maybe can't get a loan, and that's what some people just let it go delinquent, and then but recoup it before the 3rd year is up, right? So that the interest rate, the tax amount is an indicator. Obviously, the quality of the property is going to be another indicator of that. So redemption likelihood is a big thing. And then, like the rule of thumb is for all investors is like know your area, right? Be familiar with the neighborhoods, the city. Don't try to just like that is sort of the pushback on like the accessibility to auctions. It's like, yeah, you can go bid at, Boone County, Missouri tomorrow, but do you know anything about Boone County, Missouri? Like, do you know whether that river, is like, it floods this time of year? I know it's a bad analogy to use right now, but maybe also in all seriousness, like life happens, right? And tragedy happens. We know that all too well here, right? And if you are buying in an area you're not familiar with, it could wipe you out, right? One rule of thumb for property collateral and preserving it is as soon as possible, like under the law, is get a basic fire policy on your property. That might be the best money you ever get. I have investors that have just lost the whole thing just because it was a nice property, but then it burned down right before they could finish foreclosing on it. It burned down, right? So, yeah, property insurance is a big thing. Usually, there's some institutional carriers that can kind of put a blanket policy, or Lloyd's of London kind of stuff, and it's not your average State Farm agent isn't going to be able to help you with that, I don't think, but there are some that we know of that can do that. Yeah, I'll come back to you in a second.
What is the lien position at the sheriff's sale of the tax lien on the property?
It's immediately first.
I'm sorry?
It's first.
It is,
Mhm.
okay, it supersedes anyone.
It does. It does. There can, yeah. And then it's ranking. And then it's who came first.
Is it subject to the mortgage that's on it, though?
Well, it's subject to the mortgage company being notified of the process. So,
If they get notified and you buy the tax lien, there's no mortgage owed.
so right now, you're very close. So, you got the point. If you right now you buy a tax lien on a property that has a mortgage, and you do all the right things, like hiring JurisDeed to do your compliance. I'm just kidding. But you send the note. You see that mortgage company has a mortgage on the property. You do your research. You send them the notification, and they don't respond. Yes, you can cancel the mortgage without paying them a dime.
Normally pay the taxes anyway?
What's that?
They normally pay.
They normally do. Yes, yes. But we have canceled mortgages before. In fact, there was it's the same way with any kind of judgment. It doesn't have to be mortgage. Like there was a big property out, actually used to be part of the Lake Forest Plaza Mall out in New Orleans East. Used to go ice skating there when I was a little kid. So it's really dating me now. Part of that was there was a $1 million judgment in favor of the city of New Orleans. They didn't respond in time. Got that canceled. And so, yeah, it's notice and time. That's all there is to it. It's due process, right? You had your shot, you missed it, you lost out. But yeah, if you don't notify, if you don't have good notice, and of course it gets into like the whole due process, concept, you could lose. And nowadays it tax sales in Louisiana used to be, they'd throw the whole thing out, right? It was just like, if you sneezed bad notice in court, they were like, gone, your whole tax sale. Now, since 2017, the Louisiana Supreme Court decided a pretty landmark property that has been time tested now in the appellate courts and everything, and it allows for curative notice. So somebody, pre-tax sale notice doesn't matter anymore. It could matter if you do it correctly, but that's leading up to the sheriff sending out first-class mail and that being good enough. It hardly ever is. So it puts it even bolsters the importance of that notification period in the redemption period with you as the investor protecting your investment to send out good notice. That could be the first and only notice that you need. You only got to be notified one time, basically. Like due process doesn't require you to be notified more than once. You have to, or 3 different ways. It's once. It's one good way, right? It's reasonable efforts. And if you've done that and you can prove it, you're good. Doesn't matter if it's before or after. Because at the tax sale now, as opposed to before, it's just a lien. No property rights are terminated or affected by the selling of the lien. So that's the beauty of the lien system. It is that one of the earlier slides. It creates more insurable titles, more marketable titles, and that's obviously a good thing. So yes, ma'am.
Since you've worked around the country, which states do you like or think have the best processes and laws and statutes for people that are interested in just making money versus acquiring the property?
The same ones that are the most competitive, of course, but Florida is right off the bat, number one. As a matter of fact, a lot of what Louisiana's system has become was modeled after the Florida system. And that Florida became kind of the model post-Supreme Court case 2 years ago, where everyone had to kind of relook at their process and said, okay, well, who's out there that's got one that's working right now? And we kind of looked at Florida. They called it a dual auction system because they auction the lien, and if it doesn't redeem, then they auction the property, right? So it's this kind of two-part system, but it ensures due process, ensures fairness, and it's a pretty systematic thing people wrap their heads around. The other ones are just stable systems that have high interest rates and don't have a whole lot of like crazy litigation. Georgia is a good one. South Carolina is another good one. Arizona. There's a bunch more, but those are that's sort of the Ohio is another good one. New Jersey is really weird. They actually collect tax at the city level. Like there's no county tax at all. So you have like 500 tax sales a year. It's great. Every little micro town has their own tax sale. So it's just wild. And Nebraska and Iowa are both kind of round out the Midwest. Those are really good.
How can investors find a list of the tax delinquent properties?
Right. Yeah. Right now, one of our partners is, just from an industry partner. We don't have an official thing with them yet. But taxsaleresources.com is a company that's been around for a long time, tried and true. I'll vouch for them. I know the CEO, solid family out of the Midwest. And they've just been serving tax lien investors, or mostly tax deed investors, to be honest with you, but you can't serve one without the other. The data and the information is so valuable to both. So what they've done is they've essentially said, kind of like we're solving with the fragmented laws, they've done with the fragmented auctions, right? So everything that's out there for sale, it's like all these different auctions in New Jersey and Texas, Georgia, they consolidate it into one place. What's for sale this year in the country, right? That's kind of cool. And then they built in a lot of education. I think you guys found me on a YouTube podcast. That was them. That was Tax Sale Resources that was interviewing me, and that's kind of a component of it. Is they're providing that value of that information and that sort of they're there for you as the investor support and resource. Sorry, you had something earlier?
Yeah, I was wondering how much a foreclosure actually costs the process. It sounds like all of these tax liens will eventually, if they don't get redeemed, they'll go to foreclosure.
Yeah.
What kind of budget do you need to have kind of on the back end if it doesn't redeem?
So there's no like regulated thing here, but but on average, if it's uncontested, you're just kind of cruising through. You could expect to spend about $5,000. And keep in mind that the variables there are how many defendants do you have, how easy can you get them served. If you have a court-appointed curator to go and find the absent person, then that's another attorney. You got to pay that person, So it can get, those are some variables there, but if, again, you don't go invest in tax sales and buy one, right? And if that's your budget, get together with some friends and pull it together and split the profits, right? Because you got to play the odds, you got to play the numbers. That's where you'll see some of these statistics that we're talking about, some of these returns. It's in the numbers. It's not in one. You won't see it out of a portfolio size of 1, 2, 3. Doesn't mean you can't get lucky. And again, if you roll the dice, 91% chance you're going to get redeemed. It's not a bad return. So it's a calculated risk. It's just not like you may not see the kind of numbers we're talking about that the institutional guys see. But yeah, about 5, and then that under the current system, if it's a partial ownership foreclosure, which would be a partition suit, and it's still uncontested, you can actually get that money back. You can get your legal fees back. Now it's up to the judge to say exactly how much we always ask for, a little bit more. Hopefully the judge agrees. Sometimes you just get it. And you're on top of your redemption notifications and your mailing costs, and then your tax lien plus the interest that's accrued up to that point, all that kind of stuff. So I think we've done the math before for a number of investors, and actually the 99% is better than 100%. Surprisingly enough, if you know the system, if you forget about how the whole thing sounds kind of complicated, kooky, whatever it does, but if you could level that with someone who knows what they're doing, you have a greater return on the 99% because you're going to get all your costs and fees back, and so it takes that element out of it. And I mean, unless it's a mansion, right? And then it's like, but still, even 99% of it's only 1% less than you would have gotten had you gotten 100%, but you got all your costs and fees back. So, but sometimes you can't pick and choose that because it's an auction, right? So you might go for 99%, and then someone bitches down to 1. So it might just happen that way. So, yes, sir.
So, when you buy a property that's previously had a tax lien that has been confirmed, is my knowledge that there's only really one title insurance, or there's not that many title insurance that will cover it? Does this new switch open up to where there's multiple title? Now it's like First American or whatever.
That's who lobbied for the new law. I mean, they did that for a reason, right? Because they feel comfortable with it. So I think that this issue is going to become a moot point. Now, again, it's not retroactive, so everything that's in, keep in mind, like how this will affect deeds is several years away, right? Because you have the sales next year, plus 3 years before you even have the right to file a lawsuit. So you at least 4.5 years away from even smelling the final outcomes of this new law insofar as title and foreclosure ownership. So, if you're wanting to get in, you might start stashing your portfolio with some of these for the redemption rate, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking to get deeds and start to foreclose on properties, it's going to be from the secondary market, by engaging with those who bought tax liens under the prior law, but operating under the foreclosure laws of that prior law, which does create a more unique path to getting title insurance. And so to answer your question in that regard, basically they all will, I don't know if any of them like completely wholesale say, no, I won't touch them. Some are more like stay away from it than others. But I know almost all of the main title underwriters and their head attorneys and everything, and they basically have a position of they'll do it one by one, and if everything looks squeaky clean and you got a good notice, and and they love for you to go get quit claim deeds from because what is that doing? Making zero risk, right? If you got a quit claim deed from the person you can't find. But U.S. National was the insurance company that spun out of the Civic Source Adjudicated Properties, and they're still out there. And then I know Stewart Title has a little bit more leniency with it because they were the first big writer of U.S. National with Stewart Title. Oh, it was Title Stream. So still a little bit more nuanced, but it's out there. I mean, you can get it. You can get it. It's going to be a little more expensive, and people have been doing it for years now. And what they just do is they it's a whole effort, even with the realtors. I mean, like educating potential buyers, putting it in MLS, because you don't want someone that's going to cause a bad deal to happen because they were sticker shock, right? They're like, what is this freaking expensive addendum thing, Like, well, you kind of knew that when you were looking at the listing before you came with the property, but so it helps out to have everybody on the same page, to have a title attorney that writes for one of the underwriters that's going to do it, and so it just, once you work out those kinks, again, sometimes the complexities and that like more difficult, it creates barriers for other people to play in that game that you've maximized, right? You figured it out, and that's why some of the existing institutional lenders, tax lien investors, didn't want to change the law. They're like, it's really complicated, and we love it that way because you think it's complicated, and we can play more. Yes, sir. Oh, that's just an average of like legal fees across, like, I mean, any attorney can charge whatever they want, right? I mean, it's ballpark, yeah, 5,000. If it's uncontested, if somebody tries to challenge you, it's going to.
You recover that cost.
Mhm.
So you get credit for that.
Yeah. Yes, and so that's a good point. So that's under the new law too. So when I mentioned it a second ago, I meant the partition examples under the current law, you get your money back. Under the new law, it's just baked in, and it's the discretion of the court, but it'll probably wash out to about that. Maybe it'll even a little higher, because there's a lot more steps now on a foreclosure process, like a mortgage foreclosure has multiple steps to it.
Is your company one that we could hire to do the foreclosure process, or is that another attorney?
So JurisDeed is not a law firm, and so what we have partnerships with law firms, including one that I started when I started JurisDeed. It wasn't paying the bills yet, so I kind of had to create a law firm too, but that has taken a life of its own, and it's become. I'm so fortunate that I did that because it's kind of created like a blueprint for almost like a franchise. And like a niche law firm that could be replicated in other states, and it's what we become. JurisDeed becomes is the conduit through which the investors can go from acquisition to liquidity without blinking an eye, without having to go anywhere else, including engaging with a lawyer, getting the foreclosure done. You're just really just growing your money through an asset class, just like a 401k.
I guess what I'm getting at is if you get to the point where you're buying these deeds, these tax sales, and you can hire the attorney, just write a check, and they'll take care of anything that doesn't get redeemed.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like, and you'll get that money back.
You're just fronting the money effectively, and you're holding it out a little longer, but you're just going through the process. Yeah, I mean, banks are not. The prospect of foreclosing on mortgages does not stop banks from lending. That's not very scary, right? They keep lending, and as we found out in 2008, lending a little too crazily. But yeah, I mean, it's a baked-in process. You get your money back. You just got to be willing to play the game. Sure.
One question. Last year, somebody bought the tax lien.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this year, it's up again.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I know that there's a tax lien on that property?
Yeah, part of being a skilled tax lien investor is going to be managing your assets, managing your portfolio, and that's going to be because every year is a new tax bill, right? And bear in mind, when you buy a tax lien, you're buying last year's taxes, right? So the year in which you buy the tax lien, there's another bill of taxes that's owed currently, right? And so immediately you want to jump on that, and I'll tell you why you want to jump on it as the investor, because previously you'd get, if you paid we call it the subsequent taxes, right? So you buy whatever year one is for you, right? You buy year one, and then year two rolls around, and it's still that year's delinquent too. You could go pay that on behalf of the debtor, and it's not another tax lien. But it adds to your redemption amount, and you would get 1% per month on that one from that date forward. So every year you pay would run on its own calculation of interest, 1% from the day you paid it, right? The new law adds a 5% penalty in addition to the 1% per month on top of every time you pay subsequent taxes, and you can pay it the day it turns delinquent. So on day 32 or whatever it happens to be, if it's January 1st and it's still unpaid, show up with your checks and go because now look what you're doing to your return. Your return it just explodes Really, if you do that across, and you do that consistently across your portfolio, that's the new strategy. And think about what the public policy is behind that, right? It's a quicker collection of tax. It doesn't change the rights of the homeowner to come pay it back. You still have to go through the same process, but the parish gets their money faster because you're incentivized to go pay it. And so it's a good deal for you, it's a good deal for them. It doesn't hurt the homeowner any more than it did before because that interest accumulation was already happening, but the parish was keeping it. Now they're just offloading that to you. So now the investor gets to keep it and they get their cash sooner. So it's a much better, it's actually, paying subs is a better deal today under the new law than it was under the past law. But most institutional investors, even under the current law, pay their subs because you're still adding to it. It's not as nice as that extra 5%, but it's still nice. It's still another 12% per year. So you got to have the capital to go do that. Speaking of which, before the new law, there weren't really any lenders out there that would lend money to investors on Louisiana tax sales because it was this hybrid crazy thing and they didn't know what the collateral was and it was just too wacky. But lending in the national scene is a thing. Like there are banks who lend money to investors who have portfolios of these things to go pay for subs, to go maintain the properties so that you can reinvest some of your capital into the next year's auction and not have it all tied up in paying subs and paying for legal fees on year 4, year 5, whatever. But I haven't heard about this yet, but the states in which these lenders were lending in up to this point were states like we're becoming. So I think that finance is going to become a new big thing, and it's going to be available in Louisiana because it's the same game that they've been playing in other states.
You get 18%, they get whatever.
Well, and that deal, the spread could change with the market, right? Of course, so sometimes, like recently, it hasn't been that great of a deal, right? But with interest rates going higher, but when it was like, when you could borrow money, when the banks were basically paying you to take money, like, remember when that happened? I mean, like, yeah, all day long, because the statutory interest rate is fixed in law. It can't change, but the borrowing rate does. So that's when you want to jump in, borrow that money, get as much as you can, and then just go hog wild and buy the things that are at fixed statutory interest you can't lose.
My other question I asked.
Come to you next. No, go ahead.
I asked East Baton Rouge Parish.
Okay.
I asked if the tax liens are not sold in the auction, and I buy them after the auction, and they told me no, because they go to adjudicate it.
Right. It's true.
So some states you can buy them after.
Yeah, also true. And it's but.
How you get adjudicated from? You have to buy the property.
Yeah, well, under current law, Louisiana has, this is something I know all too well, but it's the adjudicated property process. You still have to, the parish still has to wait 3 years. It's not the same, it's not the redemption period. It's not the same redemption period, but it's the same amount of time. So there's still,
Before they can sell it, they have to wait
correct,
3 years.
right. Tax sale happens, no bidders, crickets, right? So there's still this delinquent tax lien that nobody paid. The homeowner hasn't paid it, no investors paid it, it's just still sitting there. So nothing's happened, right? And so they have to file a certificate of adjudication, which they're not really required to do, but it's kind of silly not to. So they file that certificate, and then 3 years from that day, this is the parish, is when they have the legal right to go through that process of offering adjudicated property for sale at auction.
Will they have the title all clear?
And that depends on who's handling for it. Like that's what we created at Civic Source for the clients that hired us to do that work. And every single property that went into a Civic Source auction for adjudicated property had to go through that gauntlet before it would go into the auction. So it was pre-cleared. And so that's how we were able to have that kind of success. But most other places, if they don't have that system in place, it's really buyer beware. Now you can still do it. In fact, you can buy an adjudicated property and then go quiet the title. Now you got to add maybe $5,000 to your purchase price because now you have another thing to do. So if you buy it pre-cleared and you have a title insurer who will insure it, you're done.
In that scenario, the owner can still come back within that
Yeah,
3 years.
correct. They can come back until the time that you complete the sale of the adjudicated property to the investor. but they'd have to pay for all the additional costs. If you incurred additional costs to start getting the property, the research, they have to pay all that too. And the likelihood of that happening is it's not very high. I mean, again, these are adjudicated properties are like investors didn't even want it, right? So like it's like the desirability, it's pretty low.
But as an investor, if I found that person, if I went and found them and said, your property's all a mess, you know.
Yeah. No, it happens all the time. It's nothing wrong. I mean, sometimes that's a great strategy, especially if you're partnered with, if you have the research, or if you do it yourself, or you work with your attorney to get all that content information and just track people down and try to do deals. You could shortcut the process by getting quitclaim deeds. You don't need specialized insurance anymore because you got the deed from the owner, right? So yeah, it just wipes it out. A lot of times you can't find them, can't get a hold of them, or they don't want to deal with you, that kind of thing. But
I think we have time for one more question. You had another
yeah,
question?
in the back.
So if I want a 2024 tax sale,
Mhm.
and they don't pay the taxes for 2025.
Right.
February 1st, I go in and don't pay the taxes, they add it to the tab, correct?
Yes, the collector, they add it to the tax bill account is for that one property. It's
It would reflect that I know that money is I paid it, and I get the 1% interest.
theoretically, yes. This is up to the efficiency of the collector. I mean, their software program. I mean, like there's a whole bunch of variables, but under the law, yes, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. And yeah.
The other question I had is, I mean, they're obviously not paying taxes. What if the property becomes blighted? Like, who's responsible for maintaining the property, cutting grass, et cetera? Do I need to do that if I now have the tax?
Not when you're the lien holder. No. As a matter of fact, you don't have a right to possess the property or be on the property physically, unlike a mortgage. So in a tax lien scenario, you don't have a right to be on the property. It's actually legally trespassing. So don't do that. If you're doing drive-bys, just technically just street shot, right? Yeah, there are mechanisms to get early possession if there's like the code enforcement cited it for blight or abandonment, that kind of thing, that you can go and ask, like without a contradictory hearing, without having to serve anybody, you can just go and get permission to go. And technically the permission is to fix the blight, right? But the way they wrote the statute, this is current law, there's no provision to kick you off. So I think once you're in, you're in. It's kind of a weird thing, but you're not really incented to do that right now, even though the law says you can get a lien, you put a lien on the property to get your, like I say, you go do improvements, and that lien does not go into your redemption
So you have to lien the property in order.
and be ranked down below everybody else, and the chances of you getting that are zero.
So what are the risks?
What's that?
What are the risks of not doing it, like getting further?
I mean, the fines could go up. They could demolish the property, which could totally compromise the investment value for you. I mean, there's some overriding principles to do it anyway, right? Like if you really think you're going to get the property. Typically, most investors don't go through that kind of effort when it's still in the redemption period, though, because it would be a lost sunk cost. You'd be hard to get that back. If it ultimately redeemed, they wouldn't be required to pay that to you to get the redemption, and you would have to then pursue that lien. And then if you had superior liens above you, you'd have to pay them first. It's not a good scenario. But if you're after the redemption period and you have a right to go get title because you didn't redeem your lien, it changes the whole game. You might want to not wait until, you might want to go ahead and start fixing the property now. Like I was saying, that's probably a good time to go get hazard insurance too, because you have kind of quasi title. And so you can get some insurers will let you get hazard insurance on that at that time. So now you have protection, and you go fix the property up so it doesn't fall into disrepair and have to pay City of New Orleans $15,000 in fines, for 30 days of delinquency. So
Is there a list somewhere of all the tax lien sale holders, all the people that bought all the tax liens?
but not that's. We mine that data, but it's not publicly available. I mean, the public records are available, but you need to go to you have to search each parish, each city one at a time, or pay someone a lot of money to go do it. It's one of the pain points that we're trying to solve with having access to that information more readily available. But yeah, technically it's public records. You can go search for it. Most parishes call it different things too, like other kind of title is called in Calcasieu Parish, and it's tax sale, tax lien, tax, so there's no continuity to it, but yeah, it's out there. But it's good information to have, though, because especially with secondary market, you want to do deals and get a hold of people who want to get rid of liens. And the hardest thing, I'll end on this over time, but currently the hardest thing on tax lien investors, in my opinion, is the lack of access to the redemption data. It fuels both your intelligence of what to go buy, as well as like what's going on with that tax lien. It's not, because a lot of times they're supposed to file a redemption certificate when it happens, but that may be months down the road. Some don't even do it, and you got to match up the record, the redemption number on the certificate with the corresponding number on the tax sale certificate and in the public records, and it's just it's crazy, right? So like if you were to go do what it sounds like you were wanting to go, like, let me go call the tax lien investors, let me go call them up and say, you want to sell? Man, that thing redeemed last year. Why are you calling me? It's like, that was a waste of time. Yeah, right. But you get my point. It's like, it's just kind of chaotic. So we're trying to solve that problem. It's not easy because that data does not come to you clean. Like we have to clean it and normalize it and standardize it. Some of it's getting more and more available programmatically, like through APIs and through big data centers. But it's still in its early stages. It's still different in every not just every state, every county. 3,100 counties in America, and everyone's different.
All right. Give it up for Stephen.
Thank you.